Hi everyone, good afternoon. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. There is absolute chaos today in the house. There's a man and van who decided to turn up exactly at 3 o'clock to pick up some furniture and all sorts of wonderful things. If you were here now, you would see how chaotic everything is around me. I've just framed everything just enough so that you can only see the tidy parts. Now, this mini training is about, I want to talk to you about the different ego parts. Perhaps some of you already know about this because you've been coached or you are a coach yourselves, or you might have done some work with a therapist or something similar. If you've never heard of the ego or ego parts, then get ready for some quite interesting concepts. Hi Lily, nice to have you here. I just want to give this some context so you know where this theory of the different ego parts comes from before we move on, before I give you more information. So there is a concept that is called reparenting, and it's about learning how to reparent yourself. So unfortunately, many people in this world growing up do not receive the type of parenting, the type of supportive parenting that is needed to nurture our needs during our different developmental stages. So what that means is that it's very common, very often, at a very young age, we end up actually parenting our parents. We end up taking on responsibility for the emotional or other needs of the grown-ups in our lives, for the parents or parent figures in our lives. So what happens is that growing up, we end up having what we call a wounded inner child, because there's a part of you who is still that little child in you who wants to please everyone else, takes responsibility for everyone else's needs, and doesn't know how to nurture herself because that inner child didn't receive the nurturing that it needed. So a very powerful and very effective method, in my experience, because my coach Eileen does this reparenting model with us as well, it's the reparenting. So in order to, before you even begin to learn how to reparent yourself, you need to start identifying and become familiar with the different ego parts. So the ego, you can say it's your mind, it's your thoughts, whatever you want to call it. It actually it's not just one thing. There are different parts and different angles and sides to an ego. And the light side of the different ego parts is this. So you might want to grab pen and paper for this. So we have the mother ego, or you might want to call it as the feminine part, which is the part of you that is able to offer inspiration, encouragement. Then we also have the father ego part, or the masculine energy, that gives you validation and that acknowledgement of who you are. And then the third part, the third ego part, is the inner child. So that's the joyful part, the playful part, the carefree part. The part of you that needs that inspiration and support from the mother ego and the validation and acknowledgement from the father ego. So you can imagine it as a triangle or as three different pieces that kind of merge and kind of are connecting with each other. So sometimes what can happen is that one part of us isn't entirely, so one part of us might have the light aspect of it. So Maybe we have that part of us, the mother ego within us is quite prominent. So it's very easy for us to inspire our inner child and feel inspired, but perhaps we don't validate our needs or achievements. And so then the father ego is not present enough, or is not there in a kind of light side. So sorry, I've got lots of notifications popping up. Just want something to consider. See if there are elements in your life at the moment where perhaps you're able to give yourself the inspiration and the motivation needed to either face a change that you want to make, or a goal that you want to reach. And if there's a part of you that isn't giving you the acknowledgement and the validation that you need, or perhaps there is a part of you where your inner child is wounded, hasn't received the nurturing and support that it needed, and it requires more support and care. The inner child wants to know that it's safe for it to come out and play. So that's the light side of the different ego parts. So the light side, I don't like calling it positive, negative, because I don't see things like that. But usually any aspect has at least two, if not sometimes three sides. So if the light side of the ego part is inspiration, validation, playfulness, childlike behavior, then the shadow side of the different ego parts is that the mother ego can also become the critic. So it can criticize you. You can end up criticizing yourself. The shadow side of the father ego is the dismissive. So instead of validating and acknowledging what you're doing, you're dismissing all your efforts. You're not even looking at all your efforts and your achievements. The shadow side of the inner child, in my experience, doesn't make it true, is that it goes from childlike behavior to childish behavior. So it could be impatience, kind of, throwing tantrums, loose boundaries. So the thing that would be really useful for you to do as an exercise is to, now that you have written down the light and shadow side of the three ego parts, is to get curious about which ego parts are more dominant within you. Is it the light side of it, the shadow side of it? And how you can invite the other ego parts in your life. Usually, so here's an example. For me, the strongest ego part that's kind of easier for me to access is the mother ego, the one that offers that inspiration. But the shadow side of that is that I can end up really criticizing myself. The father ego and the validator is fairly quite absent in my life. I really have to continually remind myself of the achievements of what I've created, where I've come to, all that stuff. And my inner child was definitely wounded just because of life. I mean, they do exist, but in the majority, sadly, most of us have a wounded inner child in us. The thing that you can do is to ask your inner child what it needs to feel safe so it can come out to play. Now, all of this might sound a bit like a bit woo-woo or a bit strange. Your ego itself might just dismiss what you've just heard because it's too much or overwhelming. That's perfectly normal. As I always advise, feel free to rewatch the video. They're all in the video library. But it's just a very brief overview of the concept of the different ego parts that are based from the reparenting model. And you're learning how to reparent your wounded inner child. Because once you're able to learn and identify the light and shadow of the different ego parts, then you can start accepting and understanding that they're all necessary and they all have a role to play in your life. And from that point onward, they can start working together and they become like your team, like you've got the inspiration and the validation and the playfulness all together to guide you in your everyday life. Hope this makes sense. If that spurred up any other questions, feel free to comment below and I will respond to them when I finish the live. Just because I'm on my mobile phone and I don't think I can see the notifications here now. So yeah, have a wonderful afternoon. Just a quick reminder that I have one space available for a one-to-one coaching client. So if you are ready to receive coaching support to explore more about any issues you may be experiencing, like self-doubt, fear, anxiety, and you know you're ready for help and you would like to find out how we could work together, feel free to message me via Facebook and I'll be very happy to arrange a conversation with you. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of the day and I'll see you back here again soon. Bye-bye.